Well, joining us to look at that big issue which the Senate Committee on the Review of the Constitution and loads of Nigerians have been talking about is Tayo Oyetibo. Is a senior advocate of Nigeria and a lawyer. Good to have you join us this morning.
Good morning.
Well, when we talk about Constitution review, a whole lot has been said about it all. But again, let's start with the first that major, some analysts have always talked about. They say first the present Constitution we have is a lie because of the word that we, the people. You've taken part in so many other Constitution drafting. How would you describe the Constitution we presently operate?
Well, largely, I don't think it would be correct to say that the Constitution is a lie. We all know the history of the present Constitution, dated back to 1979, during the military regime of that period, when what was called the wise men were assembled, and they produced the draft Constitution, which was eventually enacted by the military government of then General Obasanjo into force. And then the military came thereafter and pushed aside the Constitution, and there was that interregnum for some period when the 1999 Constitution then came into force. If you look at most of the provisions of the 1999 Constitution, they took their origin from the 1979 Constitution, just little changes here and then. So while it may be true that we did not have a democratic setup in place at the time the 1999 Constitution was made, but it will not be completely correct to say that Nigerians did not make the Constitution. The Constitution didn't come from it didn't drop from above. It was made by the people of Nigeria. But I agree that those who made the draft were not representative of the people. To that extent, you could say that it will not be absolutely correct to say we, the people of Nigeria.
Well, if we've progressed from that, how can we, before we start talking about those other places that people would want to see inputted, taken off the Constitution, how can we make it truly people's Constitution? Because some have also said that the House of, the National Assembly cannot represent the people in this regard with the drafting of a new Constitution.
I don't agree, because the National Assembly is the body established by the present Constitution to represent Nigerians. Those who populate the National Assembly were elected by Nigerians. They were not elected by foreigners. Today, the laws that are made by the National Assembly are made by those that have been elected in the House of Representatives and in the Senate. So it will not be correct. If you want to go back to making a new Constitution, how do you elect the people that will make the Constitution? It is still the same Nigerians that will elect them. The people that have populated the National Assembly are elected by Nigerians.
How do you see the option of a referendum?
Referendum is different. You don't use referendum.
Those calling for an all-inclusive Constitution have called for the use of a referendum to make it more all-embracing.
You can't use referendum to make a Constitution. A Constitution is a more serious business. Referendum, if you have something that you want to put across to the people to say yes or no, you could then talk of a referendum, whether you want it this way or you want it that way. But when you're talking of constitution making, you must collect people together, from different sectors of this economy, to put heads together to agree on what you go into the Constitution. It's not a question of having a referendum to make a Constitution.
Sometimes we talk about alterations, we talk about amendments, we talk about reviews, and you've been part of it with the Assembly in 2010, right?
Correct. Yes.
So what's the difference in all of these? When we talk about alterations, we talk about review, we also talk about, what's the third one again?
Alteration, amendment, review.
So all those three, yes.
We're just juggling with words.
Are they the same?
The Constitution talks of alteration of the Constitution.
Well, that's the word.
That's the language used. Yes, the Constitution may be altered by this procedure, this procedure, this procedure. Alteration includes amendment. So let's not concern ourselves with all these terminologies. We want to amend the Constitution. We want to alter the Constitution. Whether you alter it, whether you amend it, you are putting new things for the old ones.
But going by the mandates given by the president to the members of the Committee of the Constitutional Review. It was saying that the bulk of the issues should the 2005 conference should be a reference point for them.
Yes.
And that's why the use of review or amendments came into this semantic contest.
Yes. My point is this. If you have a provision in place in the Constitution and you want new provisions to come into force, you are substituting the new provisions to the old ones. It may be by way of amendment, it will go by way of alteration. When you put a new provision for an old provision, you are altering what was in existence. You are amending what was in existence. My concern is that let us deal with the substance rather than chasing shadows, whether it is amendment or alterations. Nigerians are more interested in seeing provisions that will be for their welfare. That is what is important. Whether it is alteration, whether it is amendment, I don't think that should be our focus. Our focus is we need a constitution that will be lively, that will touch you and I, that will touch the ordinary man on the street. That's what we should be concerned with. We should not begin to argue on whether it is alteration, whether it is amendment. The Constitution speaks of alteration, and you alter a thing when you bring a new thing in substitution for the old one. That's what you are doing.
You know, when you think about the debate that's been going on, first of all, it's on two levels. There's
Yes.
there are those who have been calling for a sovereign national conference, as my producer rightly pointed out, that, you know, there are people who believe that the National Assembly should not even undertake the amendment because the last time that they did, it wasn't such a success, according to them.
Right.
And that, you know, they might not even have the will to be able to do it in such a way that it would make the Constitution what we should be going by. It will not meet the hopes and aspirations of the Nigerian people. In other words, it might not have the political will to be able to adjust some of the yearnings of the people. Do you agree with that?
Let's be realistic. We have an existing constitution in place. That constitution provides for the mode of altering it. The constitution also says that no one shall take over the government of Nigeria except in accordance with the provisions of the constitution. So which means you cannot alter the constitution except in accordance with the provisions dictated by the constitution. Sovereign national conference is not within the purview of the existing constitution. So how do you have a sovereign national conference? I mean, it's like torpedoing the constitution.
But what if
it is not feasible. I'm just being realistic.
The people who have spoken about it have not even accepted the constitution as it is.
If you don't accept the constitution, then what do you accept? We can't live in a lawless environment. You can't say that there's a constitution in place and you don't accept it. So where do you go? Do you create your own constitution? So you must use the existing legal structure to achieve a better society.
But
you cannot go outside the existing legal structure to achieve a better society.
Do you think
so you must use the provisions in the present constitution to achieve a better Nigeria for Nigeria.
Do you believe that those who are currently handling the amendment have the political will to be able to make it in such a way that is acceptable to those who are calling for a sovereign national conference?
That's a different question entirely. And I'll tell you the difference between democracy and military government. Democracy, you may not agree with my views. I may not agree with your views. You have to persuade me to agree with your views. I have to persuade you to agree with your views. So what is important is that the forum that is in existence presently, dictated by the constitution, those who have ideas should bring the ideas into that forum. You then persuade the other. Take, for example, state police. The last conference in Nasaba, there were divergent views. Some of us held the view that it is time for state police. Some believe that it is not yet time. I cannot force them. I have to persuade them. I have to bring superior arguments for them to realize that it is now time, that the Nigerian police don't have the capacity to police Nigeria effectively. The fears have to be examined. What are their fears? But you cannot say that because there's a forum in existence, that forum cannot competently deal with the issues, then let us go outside the forum.